the 1600s. Madrid was the most powerful city on earth. Spanish kings ruled two oceans. American gold flooded their palaces. This was the center of the world. I'm using AI to resurrect that lost world. We'll walk where Cervantes wrote, where Velázquez painted, inside the royal court itself. Then we'll see what remains today. Welcome to Golden Age of Madrid. Look at this. A 400-year-old map of the most powerful city on earth. Every line, every building tells a story. The Royal Alcázar in the west, where a single signature could start wars across oceans. The Plaza Mayor in the center, where crowds gathered to witness both celebrations and executions. The Calle Mayor connecting them, where nobles, merchants, and spies all walked the same stones. And today, we're going inside. Not just looking at it, but walking through it. The palaces, the plazas, the streets where empires were built and fortunes were lost. Every location on this map has a secret. Let's uncover them. Before we step into 17th century Madrid, it's important to understand how unlikely this city's rise truly was. In the early 1500s, Madrid was barely more than a mid-sized medieval town, overshadowed by Toledo, Seville, Valladolid, and other Spanish cities with deeper histories and greater importance. But in 1561, everything changed. King Philip II made a decision that would reshape Spanish history. He declared Madrid the permanent capital of the Spanish Empire. Not Toledo, the ancient royal seat, not Seville, the gateway to the New World, but Madrid, a town sitting almost at the exact geographic center of the Iberian Peninsula. This wasn't an obvious choice. Madrid had no major port, no ancient cathedral, no legendary university. What it had was location. Philip wanted a capital that belonged to no regional power, no old nobility, no competing tradition. He wanted a blank slate, a city he could shape into the seat of absolute royal authority. Within decades, this modest town exploded into a grand imperial capital. Palaces rose along its streets. Monasteries and convents multiplied. Nobles built mansions. Artists, writers, and playwrights flooded in. And the wealth of two continents, the gold and silver of the Americas, flowed through its royal coffers. By the 1600s, Madrid had become the nerve center of the largest empire the world had ever seen. An empire where, quite literally, the sun never set. At the heart of Madrid's power stood the Alcázar Real, a massive fortress palace on a hill overlooking the Manzanares River. This wasn't just a home. This was the nerve center of a global empire. Kings held court here. Ambassadors arrived from across the world. Decisions made in these rooms echoed from Peru to the Philippines. Inside, a maze of gilded halls, painted ceilings, and one of Europe's finest art collections. Titian, Velázquez, masters covering the walls. This was power made visible. But here's where it gets interesting. By the 1630s, King Philip IV was tired of the Alcázar's formality. He wanted escape, so he built something completely different. The Buen Retiro, the Palace of Pleasant Retreat. While the Alcázar was about duty, Buen Retiro was about pleasure. Theaters, ballrooms, the Salón de Reinos decorated with paintings of Spanish victories, gardens with fountains, artificial lakes, even a zoo, two palaces, two sides of Spanish power, duty and art, control and freedom. Here's the tragic part. The Alcázar burned down in 1734. Buen Retiro was destroyed during the Napoleonic Wars. What remains? The Retiro Park in fragments. But in the 1600s, these palaces together defined what it meant to rule the world. This is the Plaza Mayor, Madrid's grand central square, completed in 1619. And it was designed for one purpose: to be watched. Enormous, rectangular, enclosed on all sides by uniform four-story buildings, arcades below sheltering shops and market stalls, balconies above offering views to anyone who could afford them. This wasn't just a square, it was a stage. And everything that mattered in Madrid happened here. Royal ceremonies, bullfights, religious processions, markets, theater, all in one space. On festival days, the square transformed, wooden stands erected, tapestries hanging from every balcony, musicians playing, crowds packed shoulder to shoulder, the king and queen watching from the Casa de la Panaderia, the most prominent building, its facade covered in royal emblems. But here's what makes the Plaza Mayor haunting. It wasn't just celebration, it was terror. The Spanish Inquisition held autos de fe here. Public trials, heresy accusations, sentences read aloud to thousands. And sometimes prisoners were led away to be burned at the stake outside the city walls. Standing here in the 1600s, you felt it, the weight of royal and religious authority pressing down. This square was designed to remind everyone, you are being watched, by the crown, by the church, always. Today, the Plaza Mayor still stands, rebuilt after fires, but the same shape, same purpose. Tourists fill its cafes now, but the bones remember. Just steps from the Plaza Mayor stood one of Madrid's most intriguing secrets, the monastery of the Descalzos Reales. From the outside, it looked ordinary, a plain brick building that blended into the street, but inside, a hidden world of unimaginable wealth. Founded in 1559 by Joanna of Austria, sister of King Philip II, this wasn't a typical convent. The nuns here were daughters of Spain's most powerful families. Some came by choice, others were sent to preserve family fortunes and avoid inconvenient marriages. They took vows of poverty, yet their rooms were decorated with gold and silk. Their chapels held paintings by Titian and Bruegel. Their walls were lined with gilded altarpieces paid for by royal patrons. It was a paradox. Cloistered from the world, yet surrounded by the finest treasures Spain's empire could offer. A monastery where poverty and luxury coexisted behind closed doors. The Descalzos Reales still stands today, remarkably preserved. You can walk its halls and see the same art these royal nuns prayed before 4 centuries ago. This is the Puerta del Sol, the Gate of the Sun. In the 1600s, it was Madrid's beating heart. The original gate was long gone, but this crossroads remained the city's most chaotic intersection. Roads from every direction converged here. Merchants, travelers, beggars, street vendors, all of them colliding in constant motion. This wasn't the Plaza Mayor's controlled grandeur. This was raw Madrid. Mule carts rattling over cobblestones, peddlers shouting, pickpockets working the crowds, inns and taverns packed with newcomers to the city. And at night, the chaos intensified. Fights, gambling, disorder. The Puerta del Sol had a reputation. Standing here, you weren't watching power from a distance. You were in the middle of it, unfiltered, unpolished, alive. Today, it's still Madrid's central meeting point, a broad plaza where the city gathers just as it did 400 years ago. The Calle Mayor, Madrid's main artery, connecting the chaotic Puerta del Sol to the Royal Alcázar. In the 1600s, this narrow street was the spine of the city. Nobles in carriages, priests heading to mass, servants on errands. Everyone used this road. Buildings rose several stories high, their upper floors jutting out and blocking the sun. The street below, often unpaved, mud when it rained, dust in summer, crowded, loud, relentless. But something happened here that changed Spanish literature forever. April 14th, 1605. Right outside a house on this street, a man was seriously injured in a violent incident. The investigation that followed briefly entangled the house's resident, Miguel de Cervantes, author of Don Quixote. Cervantes was cleared, but for a moment Spain's greatest writer was caught up in a street brawl investigation, living the same messy, complicated life as everyone else on the Calle Mayor. Today the street is paved and lined with shops, but its route, exactly the same as 4 centuries ago. Every great capital has a great river. London has the Thames, Paris has the Seine. Madrid had the Manzanares, and it was a joke. This wasn't a river, it was a stream, shallow, modest, and in dry months barely there. Spanish writers roasted it mercilessly. Lope de Vega called it a river in name only. Others joked you could cross it without getting your knees wet. It became the perfect symbol of Madrid's absurdity as a capital, a city chosen not for natural advantages but for political control still. Life happened along its banks. Washerwomen beat laundry against stones. Fishermen tried their luck in shallow waters. The Alcazar rose on one side, countryside stretched on the other. Here's the thing. Madrid became the center of the world's greatest empire despite having a river you could step over. That's either embarrassing or impressive. Maybe both. Forget the palaces for a moment. What was life actually like for ordinary people in 1600s Madrid? The city exploded to 150,000 people, one of Europe's largest. But that growth came with a price. Housing was scarce. Streets were filthy. Disease spread fast. Most families crammed into casas de vecinos, multi-story buildings where rooms were dark, small, and shared. Furniture? Minimal. Water? Carried from public fountains. Cooking? Over a simple hearth. And the streets? Often unpaved. Here's the part that'll make you grateful for modern plumbing. People threw waste directly out of windows. At night, you'd hear shouts of agua va, water coming, as a warning. The smell in summer must have been unbearable. Bread, beans, cheap wine. That was the diet for most. The wealthy, imported spices, fine meats, elaborate feasts. But here's what's fascinating. Despite the filth and struggle, Madrid buzzed with opportunity. A clever merchant could rise. A skilled craftsman could thrive. Fortunes were made on these streets. History remembers kings and battles, but it was these ordinary people, the ones shouting warnings before dumping chamber pots, who actually made Madrid work. Madrid in the 1600s wasn't just ruling the world, it was writing it. Miguel de Cervantes walked these streets. The author of Don Quixote, one of the greatest novels ever written, lived in rented rooms and struggled with money even as his book made him famous across Europe. Meanwhile, Lope de Vega was writing at an inhuman pace. Over 1,500 plays. Think about that number. He wasn't just prolific, he was unstoppable. His plays premiered in corrales, open-air courtyard theaters packed with rowdy crowds. People stood in the pit, ate, drank, heckled actors, and sometimes fought each other. It was more like a football match than a theater. But the writing? Extraordinary. Spanish Golden Age drama explored honor, betrayal, faith, and power with a sophistication that rivaled Shakespeare. Here's the wild part. You could have walked past Cervantes on the Calle Mayor, heading to meet his publisher. You could have stood in a corral watching Lope de Vega's newest play premiere to a shouting, chaotic audience. Madrid's empire would eventually fall, but the words written here, they outlasted it all. We need to talk about Diego Velázquez, one of history's greatest painters, and he worked right here, inside the Alcázar. Velázquez arrived in Madrid in the early 1620s and became King Philip IV's favorite artist. He had a studio in the palace, direct access to the royal family. His job? Paint the king, the queen, their children, the court. But here's what made him extraordinary. He didn't just flatter, he captured something deeper. Humanity, complexity, truth hiding behind power. His masterpiece, Las Meninas, painted in 1656, is still one of the most analyzed paintings in history. Art students study it. Scholars debate it. Picasso was obsessed with it. Imagine walking through the Alcázar corridors in the 1650s. You pass a man with a brush, moving quietly between rooms, studying faces, observing light and shadow. That's Velázquez, documenting the most powerful people in the world. His paintings now hang in museums across the globe, but they were created here, in this palace, in this city, at the height of Spain's power. By the mid-1600s, something was changing. Madrid still looked like the center of the world, but underneath, the empire was crumbling. Spain's wars were bleeding the treasury dry. The silver from the Americas, once an endless flood, was slowing to a trickle. Inflation spiraled, debt mounted. The monarchy borrowed from foreign bankers just to stay afloat. And yet, Madrid kept building. New churches rose, nobles constructed palaces, artists created masterpieces. The city looked magnificent even as the empire supporting it weakened. It was all a facade, a beautiful, expensive lie. Here's what makes it haunting. The people living through it didn't know. To them, Spain was still powerful. The king still commanded. Madrid was still the center. The decline was so gradual, so day by day, that it was almost invisible. Like watching the sun set. You don't notice it happening until suddenly it's dark. By the end of the 1600s, Spain's golden age was over. But the city remained, frozen in the memory of what it once was. Madrid today is a modern European capital, but if you know where to look, the 17th century is still there, woven into the streets, the stones, the soul of the city. The Royal Alcázar, gone, destroyed by fire in 1734, but in its place stands the Royal Palace of Madrid, occupying the exact same commanding position. Different building, same power. The Plaza Mayor, still there, rebuilt after fires, but the rectangular shape, the enclosed design, identical, now filled with cafes and tourists, but unmistakably the same space. The Descalzas Reales, remarkably intact. You can visit today and walk the same halls where royal nuns lived 4 centuries ago. It's a time capsule. The Puerta del Sol, now a broad plaza and the official center of Spain. Every distance in the country is measured from this spot. Still a crossroads, still crowded, still chaotic. The Calle Mayor still runs through Madrid, now a pedestrian street with shops and restaurants, but its route, unchanged since the 1600s. Walk these streets today, and you're walking where Cervantes walked, where Velázquez observed, where an empire rose and fell. The kings are gone, the gold is gone, but Madrid remembers. Standing here, looking back at these moments, it's hard not to feel how close the past really is. 400 years sounds like forever. But think about it. Only 15 generations separate us from the Madrid we just walked through. 15 lives, end to end, that's all. These streets, these buildings, these decisions shaped the world we live in. Madrid in the 1600s was the center of a global empire, a city where art, power, and everyday life intersected in ways that still echo today. Through these reconstructions, we got a glimpse of what it was like to be there. To walk the Calle Mayor, to stand in the Plaza Mayor, to see the Alcázar rising above the river, to live in a city that ruled half the world. Here's my question for you. If you could step into any moment in history, any city at its peak, where would you go? London, Rome, Amsterdam? Let me know in the comments. I want to keep building this journey into the past with you. Because history isn't just something that happened, it's something we can walk through, see, and almost touch. Thank you for watching.